Isn't that how all podcasts become? It's like we just talk and then you're like, you know what we could have done is just recorded that and given
Yep.
it to other people.
That's the way it goes. So, all right. So we're recording. Thankfully, we're not streaming. So I can, but it doesn't matter because we're real people and real people.
Don't edit this out.
No.
This is what it's like.
I'm gonna start with this.
You should, please do.
What's up, marketing agency owners? Welcome to another episode of the Agency Overhaul podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Baker, and I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Nick Bennett. Nick is the founder of Harness and Hone, and he believes that you should be generating more revenue and profit than you already are, which I'm sure you agree with him. However, you're probably not getting what you want because over 90% of solopreneurs and micro agencies have the traditional business model that charges for time and deliverables, not for outcomes. Nick's clients are solopreneurs and micro agencies that have been buried in client work and are pushing 60+ hour weeks to make as much money as possible. So they finally burn out, give up, and start applying for jobs. Nick specializes in designing and scaling digital consulting businesses for solopreneurs and micro agencies. He created his program because it's the single most effective way to shift your business model and increase your recurring monthly revenue without risking your current clients who are paying the bills. All of this allows you to generate the income you want without having to work a certain number of hours per week. So, Nick is brilliant. This is a great episode. We have a lot of stuff we talk about, and we had way more we could have talked about, and I am going to have him on for another episode in the future so that we can get into the weeds on some more stuff. But if you are a solopreneur or micro agency owner, you need to listen to this. Without further ado, let's get to the interview. What's up, agencies? We have Nick Bennett of Harness and Hone. Nick, tell me what you do and how you help agencies.
Well, what's up, Ryan? Yeah. How do I help agencies? What do I do? My goodness. So I turn your expertise really into a digital consulting offer and ultimately turn you into a digital consulting business. So I've been working with plenty of agencies, whether it's in the HubSpot realm, or that's really kind of where I grew up in the agency space through all the HubSpot partner ecosystem, but plenty of micro agencies and even down to solopreneurs now.
Awesome. So tell me then, so there's most of the agencies I tend to work with are, into the like 10 to 20 employees range, plus up to like 40, 50. And they're the lucky ones or the ones who have worked really, really hard to
define
grow
luck
to that point, right? Yeah. So they knew the right people. They found the right mix. So what is it then that those kind of struggling solopreneurs or micro agencies? And first, can we define micro agency? Like what constitutes us?
I call micro agency fewer than five.
Fewer
or
than
five
five
or
employees.
fewer, and even in some instances, we can push it to 10. Everyone's got a different definition of like small business, micro business, but
Right.
If you're trying to scale with people, you don't really consider yourself micro agency, and so that's an easy way for people to typically kind of identify with that.
Cool. Okay. So that being said, what's the way that a micro agency can kind of overcome that seemingly insurmountable hurdle of growing either their employee base, their revenue base? Because I mean,
You want to do
payroll
the
is
other.
expensive, and overhead is terrible, and the whole remote only model that COVID-19 allowed us to kind of more reasonably harness has not been accessible for everyone, and some people just don't want it. So for those that want to go the traditional route, or those that just can't find the margin to hire, what can make that difference?
Well, I think some context is important too, right? If there's plenty of businesses that want to build a big business by way of headcount, and that's admirable. There are a lot of people that I talk with that are like, I want to create opportunity for other people. I want to create career paths. I want to give someone the opportunity to come in at a marketing manager and become a VP level marketer, to become a CMO, something like that,
Yeah.
which is admirable. It's not for me, but it's for some people.
Yeah.
But when you do that, you have to build your business model in a really specific way, right? You need to grow your revenue high enough that you can hire another person. And then you end up playing this ping pong match between revenue and people. And sometimes you lose revenue and you have to make hard decisions and you have to lose people.
Yeah.
Now, the way that I see this is that if you're trying to build a business with employees, that's the way to go. It's kind of just how it is.
Yeah.
It's just there's really very few ways around it. Now, if you're trying to just build a big business or just earn a great living and make a great income, you remove the need for the people and you think, well, how can I just grow my revenue? And when we remove the limiting beliefs that say we must charge for hours, projects, and deliverables, and say, how do we charge for strategy, expertise, and outcomes? And now you can build, I know some solopreneurs who offer marketing services that make more than some agencies with 5 people.
Wow. That's so that's pretty encouraging. So what then can make the difference between a solopreneur that is delivering on strategy and outcomes and value and the micro agency that's still kind of charging based on projects, deliverables, hourly rates, things like that?
Well, anyone can shift from that. There's plenty of solopreneurs out there that are basically hit the ceiling where they're working 70 hours, selling 70 billable hours a week, and they need to hire. They feel like the only way out is to hire somebody and then to continue and then start playing ping pong.
Yeah.
So micro agencies can shift away from this. Solopreneurs can shift. Even large agencies can shift. It's just the more people you have, the more bureaucracy, it's harder to turn the ship, right?
Right.
And it's just way more fun for me to work with the smaller teams because I like moving fast, and so do they. So that's just where I tend to lean. But anyone can shift their model. I came from an agency at the time, there was almost 70 of us. And we shifted from this traditional inbound agency model, selling hours, projects, deliverables, kind of scope, points. Like there's all the different models that you try to sell. And we shifted to a coaching and training and development for sales and marketing folks.
Yeah.
And that took almost 3 years to complete that shift.
Wow.
From the existing client install base that we had to whether people wanted to make the transition and shift to the new offers that we had, the legacy clients that might not have wanted to, as we can start to acquire new clients and give them 2 roads to giving them, this is the one thing. It's a big shift and it takes a lot of time to do that. So, but it is 100% possible. And the majority of the work that I do today stems from what I learned with this agency doing this transition too.
Yeah. Yeah, goodness. So 3 years to turn that size of a boat around. I can see why it's more appealing to start earlier and to recognize the potential downfalls or downside to your current billing model. So kind of I think it's important to look at how you're billing, look at the profit margin involved there, and then understand your goals. Do I want to hire? And
exactly. That's the biggest question.
Well, yeah.
Do I want to be a manager? Do I want to employ people? Like there's the nuance that's involved with developing people as a business owner and as a manager is way different than being really good at what you do and being able to monetize that.
Yeah. Yeah, I worked with they were probably about $3 million-ish agency, and I will not share much more than that about them, but they, the CEO was not the leader type. He was very much I'm very good at what I do, very much the expert, just not the type to lead people. And so he was doing a lot of work himself, and the leadership team was doing a lot of in the weeds stuff. And it just, there are some people who are great at leading, and that's really helpful skill if you want to grow and scale an agency with headcount, because leading at that point is more important than being able to do a good job with the work, because you shouldn't be doing the work if you've got 15, 20 people. But you need to recognize, okay, what am I capable of? Do I need to hire someone to lead the people, and then I'll just keep doing the work? So I'm like, paid search manager, and I've hired myself a CEO, which, like, if your ego allows for that, do it, because that's smart. But yeah, you got to recognize what you actually want as well. So I think that's a key point.
I think the most important thing is to really just decide where you're trying to take the company. Mm-hmm. Like, micro agencies and solopreneurs tend to resonate with my message deeper because they're younger in life cycle, right? Like, these bigger agencies have been around for a very long time. They've done things a very specific way for a very long time. Momentum is a very real thing. Yeah. If it's not as painful for them because they've been selling, they have a reputation for what they're doing. There's so many things, there's so many other forces at play here other than the economics of this kind of suck. Like, that's the feeling, but it's like, well, we built a really big business here. We're doing a bunch of great things. We're doing several million in revenue. We had a big team. Like, to retool this team is a massive project within itself, because if you're hiring people to be account managers, basically, to do and help deliver whatever marketing roadmaps that you scope for people, well, to turn them into trainers or consultants or coaches is that's a very different skill set. Some people may want to make that transition with you. Some people may want to learn the skills. Some people may want to go work somewhere else. That was something that we experienced when I did with this other agency. There's a lot of people who are like, this isn't really for me, and that's okay. But you have to recognize that momentum, that in the direction that they're moving, that is a huge factor in their decisions to stay doing what they're doing or to make a shift. Whereas these smaller firms, like 10 or fewer people, even down to 1. Yeah. They feel it because when they're working 70 hours a week, they're not spending time with their kid. They're not spending time with their spouse. They're not spending time with their friends. They're not doing it. They're just working, and they want the time back. Yeah. On the other hand, there's people who are probably earlier than that, which is, those people working 70 hours a week are probably making like $30K a month. Mm-hmm. And if you're trying to get there, well, you have to get through the 5K months, and you're maybe only working 15 hours a week or something like that, or 5 hours a week or whatever you're billing. But they are already recognizing that what I'm doing isn't going to work. And that was one of the early realizations that I had when I went solo, middle of last year, I was like, well, if I max out my client base, my operational load as it is right now, as I see it today, I'm only going to be earning X many dollars. I didn't become an entrepreneur to earn job money. I became an entrepreneur to earn an exponential, to earn a significant amount of money. Right. That's everyone's motivation at the end of the day, is to provide for yourselves and your family. Yeah. And I was like, well, this isn't going to work. How am I supposed to make the kind of money that I aspire to make without working 70 hours a week? Because I have an 18-month-old baby. Like, I have another one on the way. Like, I want to see them. I want to hang out with them. I don't want to work 70 hours a week, but I also want to provide for them. And it's like, you get caught in this weird spot. And I was like, I need to do this. I need to change something for myself. And once I started seeing this, you can't unsee it. And you see it manifest in all these other businesses. And I was like, this is a problem. Yeah. Yeah. That's, nothing like a baby to shift your motivations. Yeah. I've got 5 kids now, and every single child, I think except for my 5th, there has been like a major life change, either like work or like moving homes or something around, like within a couple months of the birth of that child. And like, you want to talk about lighting a fire under you. You're like, okay, now I have 4 mouths to feed. Now I have 5 mouths. Okay, now I've got to feed 7 people. I need to shift something. I don't have time to wait to apply to 1,000 other jobs either. That was one of my motivating factors. Yeah. I think everyone's kind of an accidental entrepreneur in that way. Is that
Yeah.
if they find themselves out of a job, they get laid off, or they leave, whatever happens,
Mhm.
and they go, well, there's 2,000 people who have applied for this director of marketing role or this other position that I want, and every role has 2,000 applicants. You go, I can earn money way faster, and the potential is way higher if I do this other thing. And that's how I think most people end up
Yeah. Well,
as
and I have,
entrepreneurs.
I was very fortunate in the series of events that led me into consulting, and I think this would be a good kind of short story to pivot us into some of the things that you help agencies or micro agencies, solopreneurs figure out that can kind of help them start to actually grow and understand what they're doing wrong that's keeping them back, or keeping maybe those who haven't started yet, give them a leg up so that they can start on the right foot. So when I was working for the first agency that I ever worked for, I was account manager and sales and strategy, and I was one day the president had booked a consulting gig with one of the clients, and it was like $350 an hour, and I was just like, man, I can't imagine that. And he ended up having a scheduling conflict. He's like, "Hey, Ryan, can you go and take care of this?" And of course, he wasn't going to give me the $350 an hour, but it was, at the time. But I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll go cover it." And the fact that he trusted me at that point shows that maybe he was a bit ignorant or something.
His judgment is questionable.
No, I was so grateful that he trusted me in that, because this guy was and still is incredibly smart, and so that was really affirming and helped me a lot. But I went in, I sat in with this situation, and it was basically this whole team around this giant conference table, and they were sitting in on a pitch from another agency, and it was services we didn't provide, so it wasn't like a conflict of interest or anything, and they just wanted like my help understanding, like, hey, is this a good decision? What should we do? And so I just sat there and I listened like the whole time, and I maybe said like, I don't know, I talked for maybe like 2 minutes total the whole time I was there, because I had been reading Proverbs in the Bible and the various other places, and they're saying like basically it's better to be perceived as a fool than to open your mouth and prove them right. It's a paraphrase.
Yeah.
And I have had my feet in my mouth since I was born. So I was like, okay, we're just going to avoid that, and I'm going to, help them. I'm only going to talk if it's valuable. So if they asked me questions, I was like, yeah. And then I remember one of the things I said was like, well, you have a really solid team. Sounds like they know what they're talking about. You should definitely listen to them on this as well. And I was like, I make sure that, if you work with this agency, you ask them to do this, this, and this. And then that was it. And I left, and I was like, wow, I hope that they don't feel like they wasted their $350, whatever. And then that company came back, became an actual client of more services for the agency I was working at. And they were like, hey, your guy was phenomenal, way better than these people we were talking to. And I was just like, huh. And then shortly after that, I ended up leaving and starting to consult. And it wasn't exactly a choice, but it was the most beneficial timing, actually. And I knew who to reach out to and how to help and everything. So anyway, it sometimes, I think that for solopreneurs or micro agencies that are considering consulting or offering strategy or kind of helping to provide that higher level value, like above and beyond just implementation of services, there's this idea that you have to just have all the answers and know everything. And I did not, but I knew enough about what they needed to just give some solid advice, and it was less than 5 minutes of talking. So what would you say with that kind of, just little pep talk? What would you say that is kind of the number one thing holding solopreneurs or micro agencies back from growing and from transforming the value they can provide? Let's start with growing, and then we can talk about kind of offering more value.
Yeah, and this to be clear, like I like working with micro agencies and solopreneurs. I used to work with larger agencies, and I'm just tightening my own work. But this applies, like this work and the things that I'm talking about apply to agencies of any size, and I think it resonates with them as well. I mean, they've told me so. I had some people come on calls and they go, "Do you have a hidden camera in my office? Like, how did you know that?" I was like, "'Cause I've been there."
And that's when you know.
I was like, yeah, I was like, all right, I'm onto something here. So there's a few things. The first thing to recognize is like, we already talked about, it's like, what direction do you want to go in? Do you want to build in like, do you want to scale headcount or do you want to scale outcomes? One requires people, one requires you to do good work, right? To deliver on your promises. Either way, the only way you're going to get there is if you assemble like a business model and an offer and with all the right components in place. Like you can't scale outcomes and scale your income based on outcomes if you're selling things on an hourly basis, like pretty obvious one. But you also can't attract and acquire clients if you don't have a market. And this is really where like people tend to jump the gun here. And it's like, there's an order. Like if you're selling the thing that you want to be selling, great. We need to work on your market, like in your niche, because odds are you don't have one. If you're selling hours, it's very likely that you are like a generic or generalized. There's like a big movement of no niche agencies, which I think is funny because it's a niche now.
Right.
It's like your no niche is now become a very large niche of agencies who don't want to do this thing. But like I said, you don't want to be perceived as interchangeable. This is like krypton. This is the kiss of death for so many agencies, is that people don't understand how they're different or what they do is different from all the other ones who make the same claims as they do.
Right.
And the only way out is to design a niche for that only you can own. And this isn't like a new concept. I mean, agency owners, I just ran a survey with DataBox on this, and 80% of the people who responded said that they know that niching down and doing this type of work will have a positive impact on their business. But I think it was like less than 10% were actually niched.
Wow. What do you think's stopping them? Sorry to
fear.
Trail.
No, fear. It's a fear of alienating prospects. It's and they're like, well, if people don't think that we can do, it's just like vicious cycle, right?
Yeah.
They assume that if someone doesn't see a Cheesecake Factory looking menu on their site of services that say they can do one of everything, that they will alienate prospects. But in reality is that itself is what alienates prospects, because they don't know that you are for them. Yeah. How is somebody supposed to know that you can help me? Well, they'll go, we help healthcare tech firms grow revenue. It's like, well, what do you know about healthcare tech firms that the hundreds of other agencies do or don't know? Like, how do I know that you're competent in this in a way that all these others aren't? And so they just kind of specialize in an industry, which is part of the equation, but it is not even close to the whole equation.
Yeah.
They'll specialize in a service. They'll say Google Ads to grow your business. And well, yeah, Google Ads can grow your business for sure, but what do you know about Google Ads that 100% of the other Google ad firms don't do or don't know? So there's a huge divide here. It's like the ways that we try to niche repel clients, because it is you've kicked the can from like the super mega oversaturated category of just generalized marketing agencies to a slightly smaller but still extremely oversaturated category of agencies that offer Google ad services, which is still the vast majority of agencies. And so it's like
Baskin Robbins, but all the flavors are just chocolate and vanilla.
Like, I mean, even if everybody,
vanilla?
it's like everyone still offers the same 30 flavors, but like you can. So this is a major point of failure for people. The primary one, and it prevents them from being able to market their business. Yeah. Now, this also assumes that if you can market your business, you should already be positioned to grow your business. I made the assumption early on that there was a lot of agencies out there that it wasn't that they couldn't grow, it was that they couldn't market. Yeah. Turns out they couldn't grow. And it was for the reasons that we're talking about, that they're trying to grow with this traditional model. They're trying to scale hours. They're trying to scale projects and deliverables. And it sucks. It is hard to do with a team of people. And we need to calibrate your model. I say it's like we need to design and align your business model across all of these factors, right? Like what outcomes you can produce, the service method that you offer, the market niche, your core messaging, your sales motions, like all of these things need to be aligned so that you can grow in the direction you need to. If you apply traditional agency growth models to your micro agency or your business of one, you're gonna be working 70 hours a week and you're never gonna see your kids, or you're gonna be making $5K a month. You're gonna be broke, like, and you're gonna limp along because you can't market your business. Like all of these things end up feeding each other.
Yeah.
And you kind of just end up in this little OODA loop of which came first.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen so many agency owners that have what I would have before I started my consulting company, would have called a successful agency, like good revenue, good headcount, that just run around 60 hours a week plus, constantly jumping from one thing to another, chaos, fires everywhere. Their kids don't see them, their wives don't see them, or their husbands, and it just like, it's a mess, and it's not the life I wanted. So I was always like, oh, I'm not going to start an agency. Well, now I have the white label agency, which is like the worst of the worst for revenue. But it's, it's one of the services my clients needed. Mm-hmm. So anyway, sorry, continue. So growth is an issue. Don't go the traditional model of hours, projects, deliverables.
Right. I mean, again, there's no wrong way. I have my preferred way. I have the way that I teach, right? I teach strategy, expertise, and outcomes, and teach people how to turn those things into their business and to truly become digital consultants. But regardless, these things still need to be aligned in order for whichever model you choose to actually build momentum for you, right? So the market niche is the number one thing. If you don't have that, you got nothing. Again, we talk about these big agencies with a lot of momentum. Mm-hmm. To enter the space today as a generic agency, or just do everything full service, full funnel agency is what they usually call themselves. Mm-hmm. You're gonna limp. You're gonna limp along. And
well, it usually takes them. It has taken them 10 years or so, or more. 8 to 10 years plus is usually what I see for an agency that's anywhere from 3 to 15 million, or 1 or 2 sometimes. But they have, and sorry, I'll let you get back to what you're saying. They started 8 to 10 years ago, so it was a very different market, very different way of managing all the different platforms, different methods, different market sophistications, a lot of different factors. And so you're going to have a much harder time now, not just because of the amount of work you need to do, but also because it's a very different market. So.
The way information is shared and consumed is the reason it's so hard to be the no niche agency now, right? Mm-hmm. The people who came up 10 years ago, really the primary distribution channel for information was Google. And it was a fight over who had the most information and who provided access to it. Mm-hmm. So if you could write a bunch of blog articles, this is the HubSpot inbound playbook 101. Yeah. If you could be this hub of information, that you will be highly considered for the job. Just was the way it was, because the need for transactional information was very high.
Right.
Now that has reached peak oversaturation. We're at 200% saturated. Mm-hmm. If you Google any of these topics, you'll see there's billions of results. I mean, even if you Google, this is a true thing. If you Google best HubSpot web design agency, HubSpot themselves provides a URL. It's one of the top results, and it says the best 3,972 web design agencies. How on earth is it possible? Do you want to be in there? Do you want to just be just a little tab on someone's screen? Do you want to compete with thousands, literally thousands of other agencies for this is what being interchangeable means, right?
Yeah.
So this is the primary distribution channel for information. It's all transactional. We were taught, and it was true at the time, you can build affinity with buyers and people who need what you have by providing them with helpful information.
Yeah.
It's still true, but the dynamics have changed a lot. And with the scale and maturity of social networks, now we no longer rely 100% on intent channels like Google to provide transactional information. It's like, I have a question, you have an answer, I have it. I don't care who gives it to me, whether or not you verify my biases. What doesn't make a difference?
Yeah.
I just need the answer, and I'm going to sort through dozens of answers until I get one that gets me what I want, regardless of truth, objective truth, right? Because you'll see, if you Google what is marketing, what is inbound marketing, you're going to get 500 articles. You can read through all of them. They'll all tell you something different in some way, and you're going to agree with the one that you agree with. Doesn't make a difference whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
So we have this. Now we have the maturity of discovery-based channels, right? LinkedIn feeds, like Instagram feeds, TikTok feeds, all those things. The feed-based, this is where people find information.
Yeah.
If you can't build affinity with people there, then you're going to struggle, because the intent channel is oversaturated at this point, but it's really hard to win in there for a bunch of like generalized information, right? Like all of those things are covered.
Yeah.
And so now if you're trying to win in a discovery-based channel like LinkedIn, and you're providing information on Google Ads and content marketing and web design and web development and HubSpot and Marketo and all of these different things, no one knows what it is that you can do or what it is that you believe and think and how you operate. So the generalization makes it really hard for you to market your business. It makes it really hard for people to get what you do, or for people to even want to consume the thing, because when they see your little face, your little icon, they're going to know basically what they're going to get. They have no clue what they're following, though. This makes it really, really hard for people to want to consume the information that you have.
Yeah. Yeah. Social is one of those things that I think a lot of businesses like see the value in, but don't see how to create value in. So they're like, oh, I want to make sure that lots of people see me. And then they'll just write like generic posts to, add value and educate. But it's like, you should market your business, and Google Ads is good for that.
This is like the pinnacle of the problem itself, because you're marketing your services, not your problem. But when you offer all services, you don't solve a particular problem. Like, you solve hundreds of problems. And arguably all of us do. Even if you offer one service, it still solves very many problems.
Yeah.
But you must be able to market the problem. And again, when you have too much variety, there's really no direction that you can face. Or the harder part is facing other people in the right direction. This is where the whole social thing tends to fall apart, because everyone's like, you need to add value. It's like, no, you need to just make the problem you solve highly visible to everyone who experiences it. That's what you need to do. It is a very simple and very straightforward concept that some people just really struggle to grasp. Make the problem highly visible. And the generic agency owners will tell me, and they've told me this before, and they'll tell me till the end of time, how am I supposed to know what the problem is if I don't have a discovery call? This is like the major hang up for people. I have to diagnose. No, it's just, they have to diagnose the problem.
Yeah.
And this is everything wrong with the whole system, because you need to, if you can't tell people what the problem is, then they have no reason to consider you in the first place, let alone like consume anything that you've created.
Yeah.
This is where the wheels fall off on the social train, or any discovery-based platform, right? Any feed-based thing, like YouTube has search, YouTube has intent, Instagram has intent, TikTok also has intent. The same way that Google provides transactional information, so do these other platforms. But the most important thing is, how do you navigate what goes where, and how do you actually earn people's consideration so you can earn their attention?
Yeah.
My Google is yelling at me because every time I say its name, it starts blinking.
Yeah, I have problems with that on my podcast episodes.
So it's an interesting. It's just like this interesting spiral.
Yeah.
And so where I tend to guide people is, We need to get through your market niche. We need to understand what problem you solve, who you solve for, and how you solve it. This level of specificity, like the more specific you can get, the easier it will be to attract the right people.
Yeah.
If you're a solopreneur, you need 10 to 20 clients, right? If you're a micro agency and you have like 5, 10 people or something like that, you basically need 10 to 20 clients per client facing person. You don't need all the clients in the world. You need 10 to 20. It's not a crazy, like the math is not hard to extrapolate here.
Yeah.
But we try to market as if we need everyone on earth to be a customer and we need 10 to 20 people on the planet to buy from you. Once we boil this down and we're like, okay, cool. How would 10 to 20 people know that I could help them? Well, we can just we can talk to them in a really specific way about a really specific problem that they're experiencing. And how will they know we're talking to them? Well, we can just call them out by the specific way that they find themselves or the thing that they're doing in their business or the type of business that they operate. Like there's a million different variables beyond firmographics, right? Or industry verticals or job titles that can get you down to the level of specificity that you need. And then the way that you do it, it doesn't matter if it is Google Ads or not. It's just you need to be able to say what it is. And then we need to codify that into a service method for you so that you have an offer. Most people can't answer the question just, okay, so, well, what do you do? When they cannot answer the question, how do you do it?
Yeah. So I will throw out a caveat. Don't
Please.
Start with Google Ads.
Never. Well, I mean, you could. Who cares?
You could. Just that's don't spend $16 to $30+ a click as an agency.
Oh, don't buy Google Ads. I thought you were like, don't start servicing with Google
offer
Ads.
the service. Do it. Yeah, it's great service. It's getting worse. Don't spend money to market your business, especially not until after you've discovered, okay, what niche, am I in? What problem do I solve? Very specific problem. And then also I'd say, is this transition point into model talk or do we have a little bit of time to chat about that more?
All of these things assemble to the overarching business model, right? Like all of these things are required in order to spin the flywheel. Like trying to come up with a visual here, but it's just like, if your business model's in the middle, you have like your market niche on the outside, you have your service method, you have your core messaging, you have your sales motion, like you have all of these things. I'm trying to add M so 3M doesn't sue me. And the idea is that once we move into service method for someone, they need to be able to codify their frameworks, their methodologies, their models, their mental models, and their thinking so that they can then teach it and install it to somebody in someone else's business. This is where value is created. Value is not created when you hand over an email that you wrote for somebody that took you an hour or took you 20 minutes or whatever, right? The email, like the asset itself is not valuable. Whatever the asset produces for the client is what is valuable. And the hole people find themselves in is, I can't write enough emails to make enough money because I need to sit in front of my computer for 70 hours a week. We need to sell what the email produces. And I'll give you a really concrete example. I was just talking to him the other day, and she said she's like an email. She works in e-commerce, and she does like the email response stuff, and she like helps close abandoned carts and does all these types of things. And she told me that she wrote an email sequence that produced 2x her salary for the business in a week. It didn't take her a week to write it. The email sequence went out over the course of a week, and that created 2x of her salary in revenue for the company. And so the question of life is, well, how much is that email worth? Is that email worth the $150 an hour that you would traditionally charge for it? Is it worth the $2,000 that the project may cost to write the full sequence? Like, what is that truly worth? And the question is how do you rethink? Like, this is a limiting belief that people have, is that like the value of their own value. It's like, well, how do we lift this belief and just ask the question is like, how do I capture the value that I create? Not how do I add more value? Adding more value is the scope creep thing. It's like the over delivering, the working a lot. Yeah. How do I capture the value that I create? And if you can take 20 minutes to write an email that makes 2x what your salary was worth, then then you have something really great on your hands, but you need to rethink how you package and offer that to people so that you can participate in that upside.
Yeah.
When salespeople do it, everyone's like, yeah, that makes sense. When marketers try to do it, they're like, you're crazy.
It's so true. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because it's like, okay, sales, they're thinking, well, you're closing deals, you're closing clients, you're bringing in revenue. Marketers don't do that. Well, why not?
Marketers just have a hard time tapping into the value that they can create. Value is not 100% in revenue generated. I mean, that is the ultimate goal, but marketing's value can come in a bunch of different forms, and it can show up in a bunch of different ways. The work that you do can amount to reduced sales cycle lengths. It can amount to more qualified opportunities. It can amount to several things can show up in your pipeline, and it can reduce your customer acquisition costs. It can improve lifetime value because people know there's a million ways that you can measure your impact.
Yeah, which is why attributing sales to sales or marketing, in my opinion, is not the best idea. But continue.
The most important thing to grasp around all of this, like this email example is like very binary, right? It's a closed system. She wrote the email, she sent the email, and that they clicked that, they closed the cart. Like pretty straightforward. But how do you do that when what you're doing is more abstract? Well, this is why the codification of what you're doing is so important, because first of all, we need to understand what areas of the business that we're touching and what it is the thing that we're doing. Most of the time I find is that what we're doing just isn't enough. It does not amount to too much.
Yeah.
And this is a bitter pill for a lot of people to swallow. It's like, well, what you're doing is valuable. It has value, but you're not going to be able to earn what you want if we cannot make the connection between what you can do and what outcome people desire.
Yeah.
And we need to learn new skills now. Maybe we need to tap into other areas of the business to make sure that we can be successful here. I had a client tell me when I first got started doing this work, he said, I typically will try to find businesses with big budgets, like $20K a month, because who doesn't want that? Makes his life easy. But he's like, these are the types of clients with $20K a month that take 6 meetings to change a field on a form.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm just sitting here banging my head against the wall, like we can't get anything done. And so while it's great to earn $20K a month off of one client, it's like, well, we haven't delivered anything. Our work has not amounted to much of anything. And I'm not saying that this person's worked in it, but it's like, these are the types of things that prevent us from actually doing great work and being able to create value inside of someone's business, is because oftentimes we can't, or we choose to work with people who don't have the motivation or the means to be able to win. And it's like, well, do we want to work with those people because they have money, or would you rather try to increase access to our service to people who are highly motivated to win? This is half the reason why I started tightening my own positioning and niche to more micro and solopreneurs, because they were way more highly motivated to win. They could pick up traction a lot faster, and they could see results in like 10 times faster than bigger businesses. So I was like, well, this makes a lot more sense. And if I can increase access to what I'm doing to them and create a ton of value, then everybody wins. Like, I'm happy. I get a lot of fulfillment out of it. They love what we're doing here. And I think more agencies need to think like this and say, how do I increase access to my service to people who want to win? Not just access to, how do I just move upstream and charge more and drown in bureaucracy?
Yeah. Honestly, having worked with everybody from like, hey, I've got $50 to spend once, which is a friend. I wouldn't normally do that. And then it's like, up to several hundreds of thousands a month. I would much rather work with somebody spending like $3 to $5K a month. Like, that's a great sweet spot. $10K, sure, that's fun. Than somebody spending several $100,000 a month where you have to reach out and like, hey, I was going to change one of the words in this call out extension. Can you verify this? And it's like,
can you submit approval for it? And I'll see you in a month.
Yeah, run this through legal.
Dude, there's a lot of I've had to deal with that quite a bit. Even the agency that I came from, my last full-time gig, we were selling coaching and training and consulting packages between like the low end was like 8,500 a month. The top end was like 25K a month, with like the extremes on either end being like 5,000 at the bottom and maybe 50,000 at the top per month. And the reason that worked was because it wasn't tethered to like, hey, you're going to meet with us this many times per month. You're going to meet with us, and we're going to take you through. We're going to show you how to do X, Y, or Z very specifically. It was just like, these are the outcomes that we're going to achieve, and we're going to stop at nothing to be able to get you to where you need to be. And sometimes that requires the team to work more in 1 week and work less than in another.
Yeah.
But you know exactly what you're working towards, and you can command a price like that when you're focused way more on what your work amounts to and way less on what your work output is.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, anybody listening that is charging, $100 an hour, 150, to hear the contrast between that and like 8,500 a month, 25,000 a month for this type of, and not that you want to leap from, 100 an hour to 8,500 a month, but like just knowing what's possible if you know the problem you're solving, the outcomes that you can generate through that should be really encouraging and bring you some hope that there is a direction you can go to actually grow in a way that can give you time with your family and your friends and do things other than work.
100%. And I think there's this interesting place that a lot of these business owners find themselves in, which is they don't do much marketing because marketing doesn't amount to much. And so they rely on referrals. Some people say word of mouth. I say word of mouth is something very different. Word of mouth is when people talk about you. Yeah. Referrals is when someone's like, hey, you should go work with Ryan because I've worked with Ryan. Yeah. Right? People are like, that's word of mouth. It's different.
It's
like
word of mouth referrals.
Well, it's just word of mouth is when you put words into the market and into other people's mouths and they say them. Right. Like when people talk about companies like HubSpot all the time, and that's word of mouth. It's like, I use HubSpot and I think would be a good fit for you too. That's the referral. And like they're very different, because if you work with a bunch of clients who do like task-based stuff, the hourly-based stuff, they're going to refer other people to you to do that type of work. So you kind of get stuffed deeper under the rock. But if you work with a lot of clients you hate, which to my surprise was the vast majority of people, they work with people they don't, or not that they hate the people, but they just work with businesses or within industries that they don't typically, that doesn't light them up. And they get more of that. And so it's hard to get out of that because we do know marketing, but marketing doesn't work because we can't attract the people that we want. And we do a whole bunch of different things. And so how do we explain to people what we do offer and like what our program is? And so it's not about what you're capable of doing. Like, I can do a whole bunch of different things. I do like 1% of it with my clients because that's the program. The program is to take you from one way and spit you out the other end in a different way. Yeah. So the offer is probably one of the most important things that gets overlooked, because when they get on these sales conversations, they diagnose the problem and then they create a custom scope and say, this is how I would solve it for you. And this is how much it's going to cost, or how many hours it will take, or this is the scope of the project. And it's done and over with, versus them telling people, right, this is the difference between like a freelancer, and they may call themselves consultants, whatever, and a true digital consultant, which they're going to come to the table and say, here is the problem. Like, this is you are coming to me because you already agree you have the problem that I solve, or I need to reveal that one to you right now. And this is exactly how I solve it. It doesn't make a difference who you are. We need to go through these steps and go through this program. With some steps, you may go through some steps faster because of your current situation. It may take you longer to go through others, but we need to check all the boxes. We need to go through all of this in order. And when you're able to make that offer, now it changes the perception of what you're doing and what you're bringing to the table.
Yeah. Well, I think it gives clarity and certainty. It gives more credibility to you, or it lends you more credibility because of the You're diagnosing the issue. And you're giving them clear roadmap instead of just being like, well, we'll offer this service, and do you want it? It's just like, okay, this is your problem, and they're like, yes, that's right. Which, never split the difference. That's right is what you want to hear. And then Chris Voss, that's the guy's name, yeah. Anyway, then you hear. You give them this roadmap, and you're like, this is what we're going to do, and then we do this, and we do this, and then this is the outcome. They're like, oh, this person knows what they're talking about. They understand my problem, and I have certainty that this will work because they do this for a living. This is how they've helped other people. It's my problem. It makes sales so much easier.
Yeah. It makes sales impossibly easy because now your talk track and your sales motion is basically the same thing every time. Once you learn what works, and you just move people through the thing.
Yeah.
And it's no longer confusing, and it's no longer you get out of this interchangeable space in their minds where, here's a really easy example. When I was at this agency, the HubSpot agency, we were top in the partner directory, and everyone who would come to us through this partner directory would reach out to like the top 15 or 20 partners, and they'd all just fill out contact us forms or whatever, sales consultation request forms. And they'd go, yep, we're just talking to everybody, and we want to hear what everybody has to say. And that's a horrible place to be because you've lost your context. Mm-hmm. You're on this vendor thing, and they're like, okay, here's what we have, and we want to know what your thing to solve it is. And then you end up on like this spreadsheet of like, well, for $5K a month, we'll get this from them and that from this other person. Well, they're charging $4K and it's the same exact thing. And you don't want to be, this is the absolute worst place to be. This is the race to the bottom, 100%. Whereas when you attract the right people, because you're like, hey, this is exactly the problem in the world. And if you have it, like, I'm your guy, I'm your gal. Come to me with it if you have this. They come to you and there's like, hey, like, this is, you see me. I feel seen. Do you have a hidden camera in my office? Because I don't know how otherwise you would know the things that you're talking about.
Yeah.
You get this problem, and therefore I have confidence that in your ability to solve it. What is the prescription? You're like, boom, 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 boom. This is phase 1. We build you a model. Phase 2, we attract and acquire clients. Phase 3, we're going to strengthen your portfolio. Phase 4, we're going to protect it. Like, whatever your thing is, they're going to be like, great. This makes total logical sense. I see the through line between my problem and the outcome I need, the actions that you take, and the transformation that I need to make.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, you just need to help them feel understood and prove that you understand their problem, and then give them the hope and certainty that you can solve that problem, give them the outcome that they want.
Yeah, this is why so many agencies struggle with business development. Like, it all kind of comes back to this root thing about the problem that you're solving. Yeah. And your ability to attract and acquire clients. Like, you can't do it if you're diagnosing individual problems one by one. Mm-hmm. You're gonna be dealing with client referrals until you make a change.
Yeah, and that's one of the biggest questions that I get from agencies, smaller agencies. When they're not quite ready to work with me on like retention and things like that, then they're like, hey, what's the best way that you see agencies grow? Like, how does this agency grow? How does that agency grow? It's like, well, I mean, referrals generally, but then those that have carved out that much more specific niche that solve a very specific problem, if they can get past that referrals issue, it's like, well, all they have to do is create content and reach out to people in their network, and people, often come to them because they're talking so much about a very specific problem and connecting with the right people, on their social platforms. Is like, they know who they're helping, they know how they're helping, because they know the problem they're solving and how it affects those people.
Totally. I heard this from an author and like digital creator, Nicholas Cole. He said, when you talk about the problem in the specific way, the internet's job is to go out and find all the right people. Like, the internet and the algorithm is all about signal. Yeah. It's like, you put out this signal, they put out a signal, they tap into each other, and you're drawing each other in. And I've experienced this myself. Like, from the moment I decided I'm going to build this business, and I started conditioning the market and starting to test, like, message tests and things like that, to picking my first niche to niching down even further into what I'm doing right now. And every single time you go deeper, you pull in closer, you pull in more and more of the right people. Here's where the wheels fall off for a lot of people, and I see it every single day. They are talking to themselves. Like, I talk about my problems. So if you're a freelance marketer, you go out and you talk about all the problems with freelance marketing or all the problems that freelance marketers experience, and then they build an audience, right? You're pulling in more of you. You're pulling in more freelance marketers, and they're like, I don't sell. Like, my audience is useless because I can't sell to freelance marketers. I sell to tech companies. I sell to HVAC companies. Well, talk to HVAC companies. Like, talk about their problems. Talk about what is going on in their business. How does the problem show up for them? What is it stopping them from doing? What if the problem was gone? What would life be like?
Yeah.
Not your own problems. And this is where I think the majority of the content falls flat. I mean, the content technically works because it resonates with someone.
Yeah.
But you're building in the wrong direction, and unless your plan is to become the freelance marketer for freelance marketers to teach them your ways, then you're going to have a problem. And I see this all too often, is that, like, you end up attracting more of the people who believe what you believe, but no one who needs what you have.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a ton of PPC, freelance people following me on LinkedIn, and I love them. We enjoy our jokes about, close variant search term matches and stuff, but you see all the same content in the news feed, and then anytime you post anything about PPC, which I help PPC agencies primarily, like, okay, I get more freelancers than agencies engaging, and that's like, I have to start undoing some of the work that I previously had done as a PPC, like Google Ads coach. And
Totally.
One of the downsides certainly to switching, but
no, this is fantastic, because one, we learned something, but two, you understand what it takes to resonate with other people and actually build an audience and, like, build something.
Yeah.
You recalibrating your algorithm is way easier than we think it is. It's it's understanding, again, the very big difference between what you do and what problem you solve. Like, marketing their problem, making that problem highly visible, talking about it in a way that when they see it, they go, yeah, that's the thing. Like, that is my life.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I'm going through right now. And not telling people, like, here's all the things that are dumb about Google Ads, and then all the Google Ad specialists are like, here. Like, that is going to be like, you might get some Google Ad in-house person that is like, can you help convince my boss of this? But, like, other than that, you're building a community of people who also believe what you believe. So it's such a nuanced detail, but this distinction is the difference between people going like, I hate posting on LinkedIn, it does nothing, and people who generate 100% of their business, like me, through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Like 100% of my inbounds, and people are like, how do you get all these inbounds? Like, I don't get 1,000 comments on every post. I barely crack like 30 likes. Some of my posts get like max a couple thousand impressions, because you don't need to reach all the people in the world. You just need to reach the right people. And when you talk about the problem and the way that shows up in their life, you're going to hit the right people.
Yeah.
And you're going to get calls booked every time you send a post out. It's like, it's not rocket surgery.
It's glorious. I got more leads from posts that had like 200 impressions when I switched to specifically talking about agency problems and retention than those from the Google Ads posts that had tens of thousands of impressions and tons of engagement.
The agencies need what you have, and they also, like, resonance is key. And I learned a lot of this term from Jay Acunzo. He talks about this one all the time. He's like resonance is the unlock for this type of work, because it's how people get on calls with you and say, how did you know?
Yeah.
It's because you're able to tap into the little things and the little frustrations and pain points that roll up to the bigger problem, or you get to reorient them and say, this little thing you're dealing with, turns out there's like this whole other thing that you didn't notice or consider is connected, and you get to make that visible to people. And that's really, really powerful for marketing, business development, and sales.
Yeah. And there's so much more that we could talk about, but I know you've got a call coming up, and I want to be respectful of your time. So to wrap this up, you have so much great content, so many great things to say to help agencies. How can they learn more about you?
Oh my gosh. Well, I rant about all this stuff on LinkedIn all the time. So you can, if you like what I'm talking about and you want to hear more of those types of words, definitely check out my LinkedIn feed. There will be I have a newsletter. You can go to harnessandhone.com and sign up for my newsletter. I'll be rolling out a new mini course, a 5-day mini course on this stuff. This will be the foundations of moving someone from hours, projects, and deliverables to strategy, expertise, and outcomes. So if you're interested in doing that, sign up for the newsletter at harnessandhone.com, and you will get that in the next couple of weeks.
All right. Well, I'm going to link to both your LinkedIn profile and your website in the show notes, which is apparently universally down. That's why you point. So, Nick, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation, chock full of gold. So
I appreciate you, man. It's good to catch up with you again.
Always
It's
a
always
pleasure.
good to see you, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, Nick.
Later, man.